All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code podcast5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I am so excited about our next guest. Dr. Anna Cabeca is a triple board certified OBGYN, a mother of 4 girls, and the author of the best-selling books, Hormone Fix and Keto-Green 16, targeted for women. So this doc is surrounded by estrogen and knows all about it. And I couldn't be more excited to welcome her to the show. Dr. Anna, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'd love to get started from the beginning and learn a little bit more about you and how you transitioned from being a Western medicine OBGYN into going deep into hormones and diet and seeing how that impacted your patients.
Yeah, well, it has been a journey. Let me tell you that for sure. It has been a journey. And I trained at Emory University in Atlanta in gynecology and obstetrics. And I came to St. Simon's Island as a National Health Service Corps scholar. So I had I served an underserved population in McIntosh County, which is a small shrimping village. And I just fell in love with this area. But as a kind of Marcus Welby, MD kind of position, I was often for many of the women, the first OBGYN they actually saw. And also, I was the only bilingual physician in this area. And so I had a wide variety of clients, but I also had to get very creative in keeping clients off meds as well as out of the OR because, number one, they couldn't afford it. And as life would have it, in my own personal life, in my own personal journey, we in our family suffered a personal tragedy and a trauma. And post-trauma, we lost our son in a tragic accident. And it was, thank you, it was, grief upon grief and trauma on trauma. And it's a whole journey. And I go into more details in my book, The Hormone Fix, but I'll intellectualize here. What I noted, like one thing, I went from breastfeeding this beautiful boy, 18 months old, to never having another drop of milk. And any moms listening who breastfed know that if you miss a feeding by as much as 10 minutes, your breast will get engorged. And that didn't happen, and went to completely not having another drop of milk. And then shortly thereafter, I was diagnosed with infertility. I failed the highest doses of infertility meds. And I also was diagnosed with early menopause. So my LH and FSH lab values, two lab values we use to measure ovarian resistance or ovarian function, were very, very high. So in the menopausal range. And here I was, Emory University, which I consider one of the best universities in the nation. I was Emory University trained gynecologist and obstetrician, and my doctor's bag was empty. I had nothing. And I was depressed. I always say I was depressed, stressed, and my hormones were a mess. And that is an understatement. And that led me, Kelly, on a journey around the world looking for answers. And so out of this experience, finding healing foods from all over the world, as well as healing practices, and speaking with and studying with some of the world's most amazing indigenous healers, from a Native American shaman to a Andean philosopher to a Indonesian medicine man and some of the leading scientists around the world. I reversed my early menopause, but even better, at age 41, I naturally conceived a beautiful baby girl. And now I'm 53 with a 12-year-old. I can't wait for puberty to hit again, let me tell you.
Wow. So when your milk dried up when your son was 18 months old, was that post-traumatic? Was that post your trauma, or did that? Okay. So it was your body's response to this traumatic event.
Yes. Yeah. And here I am, obstetrician and gynecologist. I never studied that. I didn't even know that would be possible. I was totally expecting, like, what will I do? I'll need, what will I do? There was just that, but it never became an issue. There was no milk. And that's how powerful stress hormones are to our body. They completely deplete our reproductive hormones. They completely suppress, many of the key hormones like prolactin and oxytocin that are needed for healthy milk production. And so everything, cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, your stress, your survivor hormones are peaked, and the rest are depleted. And that fast, that just blew my mind. And then from there, again, I was relatively healthy, but then to have the ongoing diagnosis, like my ovaries didn't respond to the highest doses of injectable fertility meds, cycle after cycle after cycle. And that felt like loss after loss after loss yet again. And that just also amazed me, because here I'd had 3 other children in my life. And it left me seeking answers and nowhere to go. And so that journey around the world, as well as part of my story, is, I reversed this early menopause and thankfully conceived, and then was able to incorporate what I learned into my medical practice, helping thousands of women. And how that translated into results was that, where I'm a surgeon, I went from doing 2 to 3 surgeries per week to needing to do 2 to 3 per year, because the body has amazing resilience and ability to regenerate. When we look at the symptoms that we're experiencing, even uterine bleeding and fibroids and ovarian cyst and breast cyst, when we look at these symptoms and address the underlying reasons of these symptoms, that's when big change happens. That's when our body is supported in healing itself. And often we don't need the surgery or the prescription. And that's what I saw over 90% of the time. Wow.
Well, I heard you say that we're so resilient, and I wholeheartedly believe that. I wholeheartedly believe that our bodies have the ability to heal, and an infertility journey for so many women is completely heartbreaking, and really just one of the most difficult things for women trying to get pregnant to go through. What, in your practice specifically, what tools do you use to help women balance their hormones and address those issues?
Yeah, well, and it definitely starts with a healthy detox. So, when I call this now like my keto-green way. And so for clients who I want to quickly detox and support them, now would be using my keto-green 16 vegan plan, actually. for 16 days because we want to kind of eliminate all exogenous hormones, all outside sources of hormones. So from meat and animals, for instance, and certainly dairy. So, the Keto-Green plan as it stands, but definitely if I'm working with infertility, I'm going to do the Keto-Green 16 days of the Keto-Green 16 plan to kind of kickstart detoxification, give your GI tract a nice rest, and improve alkalinity overall. Oftentimes infertility, as it was for me, was cortisol was like the master hormone, which when that's the case, it breaks down your body. And that is not the environment for a fetus to grow healthfully. So so essentially you're have a result of decreased fertility, which in my case was from post-traumatic stress and, chronic everyday stress at that time as well. Just that and grief, not to mention the soul aching grief. But what I do with clients is often they come in and just like in my book, The Hormone Fix, I give them questionnaires, same as that are in there. And I would put them on this detox, modified elimination diet, detoxification plan, and bring them back in, to review their lab work in anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks. And often over 90% of patients would say, Dr. Anna, I feel 100% better or I'm 90% better. And that's just where I need to fine tune, adding additional micronutrient support, herbs and bioidentical progesterone. And often my infertile patients over age 35 typically always get cyclic support with Mighty Maca Plus, which is a combination of foods that I used as I traveled around the world and then created for myself and my patients. It's a combination of 30 superfoods. So they get that because that supports adrenal and helps detox as well as alkalinize. And that helps support your menstrual cycle. And so they would get that. And then the second half of their cycle during the luteal phase, some bioidentical progesterone.
Great. So when it comes to the detoxification, the removal of exogenous hormones, you're removing meat and dairy. And then when it comes to leaning into being keto green, can you explain what keto green looks like and what foods people are eating?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have a keto macro calculator. So we'll give you a link for that. There's a quick link for that to kind of look at what does keto green in a day look like for you specifically based on your weight, your goals, your activity level. So kind of a fun calculator, fun thing to do, plus give a day of menu plans. But basically, so keto, we hear the word keto and keto's everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But there's keto dirty and then there's keto clean, which I say is keto green. Okay. And so what that means is that we want to get into our own fat stores by getting into ketosis. And so we need healthy fat in our diet, high quality protein, and low carbohydrates. Very low carbohydrates, but the carbohydrates we get have to be alkalinizing carbs. Alkalinizing carbs help support our cell membrane function, help support hormone balance, helps decrease inflammation, helps support immunity, all very critical to balancing our body's hormones. And so hence those alkalinizers, the green part are the alkaline vegetables and lifestyle practices that we incorporate. So that includes all our dark green leafies that I know, love.
Super big fan.
Super big fan, right? Yeah. And the kale, the collards, the beet greens, the Swiss chard, and, the list goes on. So all those beautiful dark green leafies that are so good for us and rich in fiber. And then that helps in so many ways because, what comes in must go out. And, fiber is a really big part of that. So that's a key part, but also during my own journey, recognizing that stress, perceived and real stress, increases acidity. And what I use to measure is urine pH. I tell clients, we're going to talk about alkalinity. I'm talking about urine pH, not blood pH. Our blood pH will stay stable, but our urine pH is a vital sign. It really does help us look and see, what's working for us, what's working against us. And what I noticed as I became keto green, as I designed this plan for myself and worked when I started going more, let me back up a second, Kelly. Sorry.
No, please.
But when I started going keto, because when at age 41, I became pregnant, had Ava Marie, and I'd been healthy, maintained that healthiness for basically, almost 8 years. And then at age 48, I was gaining weight. My patients would come in and say, Dr. Anna, I'm gaining 5, 10, 20 pounds and I'm not doing anything different. What's going on? Mm-hmm. And, as a young doctor, I'd be like, really? Sure, that's not possible. Lo and behold, I gained, at age 48, I shut my eyes, opened them the next morning, and I was 10, 20 pounds overweight, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't do anything different. And for me, that was really scary because I'd been over 240 pounds at one time, lost 80 pounds and kept them off for nearly a decade. So what was happening? And this is, these hormonal changes that I go into detail in Keto-Green 16. But so these hormones were working under the surface and for me or against me. And so I went strict keto because I did not want to gain another pound. And I just experienced negative side effects and just didn't feel well. I called it going keto crazy, which at that point, I was a single mom with a child in elementary school, first grade, and another child in middle school and one in high school and one out of the house. It was like, you cannot afford to be keto crazy or irritable or have mood swings when you have teenagers.
Right. Sounds like the perfect storm.
It is the perfect storm. And so somehow they manipulate you. It's just amazing. And so that's where I was like, well, why am I feeling this way? And I looked at my physiology. I started checking urine pH and other markers. And I was like, whoa, no wonder my urine pH was as acidic as the pH paper I had would read. So who even knows how acidic it was? And we know that a slightly more alkaline urine pH of 7, 7.5 or 8 is associated with good immune system, good health, low inflammation, good hormone balance. I mean, I told my patients the same thing, check their urine pH all the time. And I'd always been alkaline, so I got out of the habit. But going keto made me very acidic and very irritable. And so that's where I started really adding on the greens. And that's why they were really important. But also I noticed the mornings I walked on the beach, the mornings I did my gratitude journaling, I was more alkaline all day.
Wow, that's
Isn't
powerful.
That cool? It's so powerful. Our mind, our stress, our physiology is so affected by our thoughts, our actions, and our stressors, perceived or real. And this is, I just want everyone to just check the urine pH, all throughout the days right now. I'm like, check your urine pH. I'm yelling off the mountaintops, but it's so powerful, Kelly, right?
I'd love to really understand what are the benefits of being a little bit more alkaline. And again, like I said, how often are you testing? And, how can someone kind of treat themselves like their own home lab rat?
Yeah, no, this is the beauty of it. And so I pretty much tell clients, especially initially, is test every time you use the bathroom. And we want to get into alkaline urine pH first. So at least a pH of 7. So 7 is neutral, but that is really good to get. And then 7.5, 8, I'm happy with a urine pH of 7. I'm so happy. And so work on getting that and then push your body into ketosis. And then you can measure ketones with your urine too. And so just to make life simple for myself as a scientist and creator, I created urine test strips that have both ketone pads on them. You check for ketones and check for pH. And that way you're just checking with one strip. But there's pH paper at any pharmacy. You can go get pH paper and just look at that as well. And it's on my keto pH urine test strips are on Amazon and on my store at dranna.com. But they're inexpensive, cost pennies a day, and just check every time you use the bathroom so you can get alkaline. And in my book, I talk about alkaline hacks because you can be a perfect eater and still have acidic urine. And so you have to ask why. And it could be that you're dehydrated. It could be that you're stressed in a toxic environment. It can be mold toxicity. You can actually have elevated blood sugars. You can have toxic relationships. All of those things can cause more of an acidic urine pH. So it enables us to, what I like to call, do our Nancy Drew detective work. Did you like Nancy Drew as a kid?
I loved Nancy Drew.
Yes, me too. I'm like a big fan, read every book. I'm trying to get my youngest to read Nancy Drew. She hasn't caught on yet. I'm going to work on her.
Maybe.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Wow. So how does urine pH affect fertility, and how does going into ketosis affect fertility?
So this is the issue with hormone balance. When we can balance our body, balance our hormones, our physiology is better. And so for me at age 40, I mean, this blew my mind. First at age 39, being told, okay. And also looking at lab results and experiencing this myself, ovarian resistance, early menopause, infertility. When we're given these diagnoses, we don't think, oh, well, let me just go reverse that. Right. Mm-hmm. And then yet again, at 48, here I was a single mom, burnout from my business, managing my children and sole provider for my entire family. It was a lot of stress going on. And I write about this openly in my book because post-traumatic stress has a way of kind of persisting under the surface unless we deal with it in ways that go beyond the physical, that go into the emotional, relational, and spiritual. And it's really been a profound education for me and something I did not learn in medical school. And so at 48, when I went through kind of my second menopause, I had no period for several months. And as I developed this, habit to get keto-green, my period started up naturally again. I'm 53, and I think now I'm finally, I have one more month, but I think I'm finally in menopause. I'm finally menopausal.
Wow.
Menopause being defined as the day 12 months after your last period, which is such a terrible, what is that? Like puberty is the day your periods start. Menopause is the day your periods end after 12 months. Then we call it menopause. But yet, in working with clients in my programs, even if clients haven't had a period in 2 years, sometimes there's hormonal reasons for that. As we get our body physiologically balanced, they may start having periods again. And so I've seen this, especially with my younger clients in their 40s, late 40s, early 40s, all through 40s and late 40s as well. So I've seen this reverse, including clients in their early 50s. And so we can see these improvements in healthy menstrual function. I mean, that's just the best anti-aging, right?
Right.
The best, we're reproductively, if we have reproductive potential, that's the highest level of balanced hormones that we can have in our body. And, as I say, though, in my book, The Hormone Fix, is that it takes more than hormones to fix your hormones. Because in my clients with infertility, I'm going to use herbs and supplements and lifestyle. The more insulin sensitive we are, so getting into ketosis on a regular basis will improve insulin sensitivity. And the more alkaline we are, that also improves hormone balance, and your body has a strong foundation for physiology and reproduction. And so with this combination, I've seen clients, it really does help with fertility. Let me give you an example. I had a client who was in her early 40s, and she was told by 3 doctors that she needed a hysterectomy for endometriosis. She had chronic pelvic pain every single month, and her periods were excruciating. But her husband was 8 years younger, and they never had children. So she wanted to have a child. And she came to me, and I did all my own ultrasound. So I looked with ultrasound, asked her, and I said, well, let's just, for 3 to 6 months, let's do this and see what, and just see how you do. Because regardless of getting a hysterectomy or not, we still have to address the underlying reasons for your need for a hysterectomy, or the underlying reasons, for the inflammatory condition, including, endometriosis is an inflammatory condition. And so she's like, okay, I'm all in. And she followed an earlier version of my Keto-Green plan. And honest to God, in 3 months, she was pregnant.
Wow.
3 months, she delivered a healthy baby. And, she's just doing fabulous. And her son is doing fabulous. So and over again, I can tell you that when we heal the adrenals, again, as we get more alkaline, we're modulating our body's production of cortisol, because we recognize stress increases acidity. So here's a great way to see how stress is affecting your body. And as you continue to nurture, whether it's with, additional greens, additional supplements, and or bioidentical progesterone, if we're struggling with infertility, I found that very, very useful, and addressing the underlying causes, then, we get normal ovarian function and can really conceive. If there's not a physical issue, if there's not tubal damage or something, something like that, which we would work out. But I had another client, because I love this. I had a client, she's 47 years old. So it's quite old, old in the reproductive age years. Okay.
Yeah. I'm already considered a geriatric pregnancy at 35 when I was pregnant with Bash. And now I'm sure whenever I get pregnant again, they'll be like, oh, geez, real old.
Oh my gosh. You know what they call it? So yeah, medical terminology must have been decided upon by a male cohort, because if you're over 35 and you have one pregnancy, you're elderly prima gravida. And when you had more than one child, because as I was 41, I was elderly multigravida. Advanced maternal age, elderly multigravida. How do you love that?
Oh my God.
Isn't that terrible?
Horrible.
It's so terrible. What terminology? It's like, yeah, you guys, whatever diagnosis you're given, do not pay a second thought to it. Please don't pay a second thought to it.
Love it.
And so I have a client, so 47, she had failed 6 rounds of IVF. In vitro fertilization. She was a single woman. She wanted to have a baby. She had sperm donation, and she had fertilized eggs. And so 6 rounds, she had 3 eggs left. She started working with me and an acupuncturist. I'm not taking all the credit. I'll take most of it, but I'm not taking all of it. Mm-hmm. So she started working with me and an acupuncturist. And honestly, all it was, making alkaline bone broth, checking her urine pH, getting on some. She wouldn't do any bioidentical progesterone, but I had her on Mighty Maca because she was on all the fertility meds for IVF. Mm-hmm. And that 7th cycle, her last 3 eggs, she became pregnant with twins and delivered twin boys. They're now 3 years old, living in New York City.
I have full body chills.
Yes, it is such a beautiful story. Such a beautiful story. Yep.
So I know
the body is amazing. Our bodies are amazing.
They really are. And I have so much empathy for her getting to that 7th round, because I've been with clients on their IVF path, and like seeing the aftermath of all the hormones and those failed attempts. What can you attribute? I mean, she was on your Mighty Maca. What exactly was that doing? Were you detoxifying those hormones from her body to kind of give her a fresh slate? Or what do you think was like the most powerful part of getting pregnant that 7th time?
I know. And maintaining the pregnancy, especially twins, right?
Right.
And I think there's a combination of things. Certainly she was also doing acupuncture at the same time, and just talking about what it means. Like Keto-Green's not just a diet, right? It's a lifestyle. So are you meditating? Are you sleeping? Are you getting enough of your greens? And this is someone who never cooked in her kitchen, so I made her cook in her kitchen too. At least she made some bone broth. Anyway, she lives in New York City. Mm-hmm. And so food is accessible everywhere. But so there were those aspects, just incorporating, fine tuning, and also giving her hope. Like, yes, I think it's possible. And if I always tell clients, if you see yourself pregnant, there's nothing holding us back here. Let's go for it. Let's keep going.
Right.
But it does come with healing ourselves. Like, we can't strive for anything. We have to relax into it. We do have to relax into it. And that makes a difference. And I think it did for me. I failed multiple rounds I didn't do IVF. I did injectable meds. Oh my God. And what they do to your body, right? And then you see your, skipped period and you think, oh my God, I'm pregnant. Pregnancy test is negative. It is terrible. It's traumatic.
Right.
And so you have to kind of relax into it and have hope, but also it's also about healing your body. That the saying that put your own oxygen mask on first, heal your body to be as healthy as possible, no matter what the outcome. And that is that's a shift. of thinking for many people.
Especially women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So
and we're used to abusing our body. Like, okay, I'm starving to lose weight to fit into these jeans. I've got to be these, however many pounds less on such and such a day. And we can't do that. We have to relax into our body, be, at certainly our happy weight, which is unique for each of us, and just be as healthy as we can be. And that's the key, no matter what age we're in. And what I think it's beautiful is, a pearl to the longest living generations is that our centenarians, those who have lived over 100 years on this earth, have this sense of self-appreciation. Like, they love themselves and they love other people. That's beautiful. That is so healing. And as I talk about in my books, oxytocin, the hormone of love and connection, that is the hormone that as we master, our body is so much healthier. That is the hormone of love, bonding, and connection. And I call it the master hormone in our bodies. And when we're stressed, oxytocin goes down. And when we're stressed for a long period, both cortisol is down and oxytocin is down, which is a consequence people are experiencing right now, because of this pandemic and the coronavirus and the fear and what it can trigger, and why it's so important to get control of our thoughts and also to love the little things in life. Because when cortisol and oxytocin are both suppressed, are both low, we feel disconnected. We feel isolated. The people we love, we no longer feel love for them. We no longer do the things we enjoy doing, like gardening, reading, playing, laughing, being with people you love. And that's a consequence of burnout. That's where I was. I was there. I know what it feels like, and it's a dreadful place to be. And it's not somewhere we have to go.
Can you talk a little bit more about cortisol? You mentioned that when cortisol is low, we feel this way. I think a lot of people attribute high cortisol to being an issue. Can you talk about the cortisol curve and how that affects our body and what we really want?
Yes. Yeah. So what happens is, like, initially when we're stressed, chronic everyday stress or post-traumatic stress, we're constantly releasing cortisol. Cortisol is our life-saving hormone. It is a steroid hormone. It is our natural anti-inflammatory. It comes to the rescue in times of stress. And when there's too much sugar in your body, when there's inflammation or disease in your body, cortisol is being pumped out. But when it's too much for too long, there's an area in your brain called the paraventricular nucleus that then suppresses cortisol. Because I think, like, cortisol too much too long is basically frying out your nervous system. It is a catabolic hormone. It breaks us down. So the PVN, paraventricular nucleus, comes to the rescue and says, okay, I'm putting the brakes on you. So all of a sudden your body wants to push out cortisol, but the feedback mechanism is saying, nope, putting you in timeout, stay in your room, so to speak. Or as a colleague of mine, Dr. Alan Christensen, says, it's a revving engine. Your foot's on the brake and your foot's on the gas at the same time. Wow. And so the same area of the brain governs oxytocin. So like I said, when cortisol's high, oxytocin's low. But when we're suppressing cortisol, oxytocin is also low. So this is not well identified as far as why that happens, but it's the same area of the brain. So cortisol and oxytocin are then suppressed, and that's that feeling of isolation. So we have to have, and I talk about this a lot in the Hormone Fix, my first book, I talk about how we have to empower oxytocin and put it in the driver's seat, so to speak. And it is the master hormone. So doing things like having good conversation with a friend like we are now, laughing and having time where you're enjoying pleasurable activities, and certainly, sexual intimacy, orgasm, high levels of oxytocin, childbirth and breastfeeding. Oxytocin, it bonds us to this little monster we just had so much excruciating pain delivering, right? Mm-hmm. Like what, it's physiologic. It's a component as well.
Right.
And so that's the beauty of oxytocin. And so oxytocin goes up, cortisol goes down, it behaves itself, it resets. But when cortisol's up for too long, then we're suppressing both cortisol and oxytocin suppressed. I didn't understand this. I had to figure out why when we lost our son, Kelly, you can imagine how traumatic that was.
I can't even go there. Like
yeah.
I think that's probably the worst pain anyone could ever go through.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, no, unbearable. And when, and there's always that thing, like, how I've now been able to talk about it and walk through it. And predominantly, initially, it was because of my daughters. And I, my oldest daughters, and just trying to lead for them an example. When they face adversity, how do you then get up and continue going? How do I want them to handle adversity? Because I know they'll have it in their life. They'll have trauma. They'll have loss. They'll have, they will experience this. And in small ways, right? Small and big. So with this, there was that, okay, well, I just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other and focus on the love that I have in my life and those that I love. And that was my steps towards healing. Love is powerful medicine. But yet my husband and I knew from the research that 70% of couples who experience the loss of a child experience divorce. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want that. Mm-hmm. But yet we ended up divorcing. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was just surviving.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after that, as I started to try to understand even more, why did this happen? Right? Like, why was this happening? And understanding the physiology behind it, that disconnect, that feeling like I no longer feel love for this person I've loved all my life. I no longer feel love for doing these things. I could only compensate by, number one, just workaholism was my compensation, as well as, sometimes I talk about oxytocin seeking behaviors. So thrill seeking behaviors, oxytocin, those all stimulate dopamine and oxytocin. And that's a way to self-medicate post-trauma. And now that, there's an Emory expression we had in surgery that can pertain to all areas of life. And that is that the eyes don't see what the mind don't know. So until I realized this, I saw it everywhere in my patients. They'd come in with symptoms, and I would, of depression or of, name it, just depression, not feeling well, having relationship issues. And I'd ask, well, have you experienced a trauma? And it's typically within either early adverse childhood experiences, and we're entering perimenopause, or in the past 2 years. And those symptoms really start to come up. From what I've noticed, predominantly 2 years after, you're starting to see them come into your clinical practice. And so over and over again, I would start asking, and it was, a history of trauma. It was, they're feeling burnout. They're feeling disconnected. So they, or they've been so stressed in maybe at work or, being caregiver for their parents, and they no longer feeling love in their relationship and are no longer doing the self-care that they should be doing because they don't feel it. That's oxytocin. And as I started seeing that and talking about that, I certainly talk about, managing this whole keto-green aspect is about discovering what's working for you and what's not, but managing stress in your life and empowering oxytocin. We talk about stress management, but really, what does that mean? I hate that term, honestly. Yeah. But let's just call it empowering oxytocin or mastering oxytocin, because we have to bring in the love. We have to bring in the goodness. And it is a discipline and a practice when we feel burnout. When we are depressed, it becomes a discipline and a practice that has to be done on a regular basis in order for us to rejuvenate oxytocin. And there were cases too where I prescribed oxytocin, whether in a troche or a nasal spray or something to that effect, but always tested. And that could be very, very beneficial to clients as they're working through their mastery of oxytocin and moderating cortisol. Once you get to do the work from around the trauma, it's just liberating. It really is liberating.
Yeah. So what's some of the work that you recommend for someone to move through a trauma so that they don't have that constant flood of cortisol that then is shut down and depleted, and then their oxytocin's obviously depleted because they're kind of, they're in this place of trauma or depression post-trauma. What have been like the most successful tools that you've used with yourself and with clients to heal the trauma or process it?
Yeah, well, definitely there's a number of things that I do. And it's certainly, I do daily devotionals in the morning, pray, meditate. I read I read scripture. I do gratitude journaling. And that's been a practice that made a difference. Gratitude journaling is huge. It is not soft science. It really does change your physiology. It's about switching on your genes to help support positive physiology. And so gratitude journaling, focusing on what's good in your life, what you're grateful for. And then sometimes you have to make it up. Sometimes like, I'm grateful there's a new day, or, sometimes you can just make stuff up sometimes. I'm telling you, when you're feeling really depressed, you kind of have to, but that's okay. It's okay. It's a practice. But really feeling that and knowing that you're loved, someone loves you, someone cares about you, and focusing on that, who you love, who you care about. And that can make a really big difference. That shifts our physiology. That's one thing. Another thing that is grounding, getting outside in nature. Nature has a great way of resetting your cortisol and grounding you. And it's a very alkalinizing activity. And my clients I've worked with virtually from around the world will just comment how it makes such a difference to just go out and get a walk. They know they feel better, but then they see that their urine pH is more alkaline. They're like, oh my God, it's really doing something. Yes, it's really doing something. And then another third thing that I recommend is heart rate variability. And I think right now with all this stress and trauma, I'm going to start checking mine again. But when we're, as an obstetrician, I spent years listening to babies' heart rates, right? And what I'm listening for is healthy heart rate variability. And that's what we put the monitors on during labor. And if that baby is stressed out, the heart rate variability is decreasing. And we know as obstetricians, we got to get that baby out. That baby is stressed, right? Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Then we never check that baby, mom, or anyone else ever again, right? Mm-hmm. And heart rate variability is such an important factor. So we can do a few different exercises. Well, number one, on your app, on your smartphones with your flashlight camera app, there are many apps that can look at heart rate variability. I recommend HeartMath. HeartMath is an organization that is really focused on this heart rate variability, how it can decrease cortisol. The more higher heart rate variability, the better resilience you have to handle anything. And this, I think, is so critical. It's so easy. And as we start doing things, like one of the practices that gives us the most heart rate variability is thinking and feeling compassion. Isn't that amazing? Like, think the Dalai Lama right here, Mother Teresa, how much compassion they have had. And that compassion is one of the largest ways to light up area in our brain that is the same area that increases associated with oxytocin, as well as spiritual experiences and orgasm. Go look and believe it. So wow. Great. And so heart rate variability, HeartMath is just a beautiful way, and meditation, and then doing activities you love. And that activity that you're like, maybe I don't feel like doing it, but once you do it, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. Yeah, those activities.
Yeah, mostly a lot of times it's like moving your body. For me,
for me too, exactly what I was thinking. Exercise.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think when people really get in the routine of doing it a lot more often, those feelings of like, oh, I don't want to do this dissipate. And the feelings of like, I need to do this really increase for most people that I've worked with. Yes. When you talk about heart rate variability, can you get a little more detailed down to what we're looking for? Are you looking for an elevated heart rate or like a slowed heart rate, or just just the changes in heart rate?
Exactly. The changes in heart rate, the variability in heart rate. If you just like took a pen and just scribbled across a page, like just scribbling up and down, up and down, up and down, that heart rate variability, that's a good sign. It's when it's a straight line across that it's not a good sign. So when you're looking at these devices and tracking your heart rate variability, you'll be able to see the more relaxed you are as you experience compassion, you actually get this coherence, which as HeartMath puts it, it's this connection between your mind and your body, your mind and your heart. And Dr. Mario Martinez just introduced me to something called heart breathing to increase heart rate variability. And I love this because it's an exercise that every one of us can do. And if you want, I'll teach it to you right now.
I would love it. We love tools here. So give us the tool. We're already going to be testing our
urine pH
and urine pH. And now we're going to learn how to heart breathe. So how do we do it?
Yeah. So put your hand on your heart.
Okay.
And just take a deep breath in as if you were breathing, as if your heart were your lungs and you're breathing through your heart. And here you can too take the moment to experience love and compassion for yourself. Love and compassion for yourself.
Wow. That's really beautiful.
You can almost feel like the stress kind of ease away. And it does increase heart rate variability, which is just a beautiful. So, and our heart has oxytocin receptors. Kelly, when I first learned this, because, I had experienced like true heartache. And when we say heartache, my heart physically hurt. My heart physically hurt. And when I learned that there are oxytocin receptors in the heart, to me, that made perfect sense. I believe that. And it's true. The science verifies it. So when we're focusing on our heart and the emotions of our heart, how powerful that is in healing our body. So if you're checking heart rate variability and you're not getting great variability, do this heart breathing and self-compassion at the same time.
Oh, such a beautiful practice for people to just take a minute, whether they're listening in their cars or at home, just to experience that. And I love that tool. That's a really good one. Thank you so much for sharing and for sharing your story. I know many of us go through really traumatic events, and a lot of us are told to just like push through or see a therapist for a few months and just get back to life as normal. And we're not allowed to talk about it or feel it or think about it. And I think what you're giving people are real, like sustainable tools for producing oxytocin in their body, whether that's, physical contact, compassion, having a, conversation with a good friend, getting outside, nature bathing, like these are all really beautiful practices to support your own oxytocin levels. Are there any other tips that you have for women who maybe aren't looking to get pregnant right now, but deal with issues like endometriosis, fibroids, ovarian cysts? Like, what do you think the culprits? What are the culprits of those diagnoses, and how can someone hormone fix those?
Yes. Well, a couple things. First, I want to mention, I love that term you used, nature bathing. I love that. That just feels good. Nature bathing. I'm going to go do some nature bathing.
It's good.
And, but definitely look at the underlying reasons for it. And so inflammation and hormone imbalance, those are the two main reasons. So, I will say there's also a third, adrenal dysfunction. And I call those three the devil's pitchfork. I mean, they put us in our grave faster than anything. They make us suffer. So we have to get to the root causes. And that's why, my Keto-Green plan, it's not just about what we eat. It's a lifestyle, and how and when and who we eat with. All those things have to be taken into consideration to improve our physiology. So just like for fertility, the same rules apply. Healing our body, mind, body, and spirit, and using the tools and tricks. For me, I created my programs and products because there was nothing for me that existed. And I do want to say one more thing as we end, is that for everyone listening, number one is never give up hope. right? No matter what we're dealing with, there's always the next right step that we can take. And when we listen and trust our body's own natural intelligence, trust ourselves, right? Don't give our power away. Like for me, it was, if I gave my power away that here I'm menopausal and I'm infertile and I'll never have another baby. If I gave that power away, and I completely lost hope, that would have been devastating for, my family would look completely different today. And number two is to give ourselves a lot of grace. When we've had adverse childhood experiences, when we've had trauma, and when we've made mistakes, to give ourselves grace. Grace, self-forgiveness, letting go of any shame and guilt is truly, really, really, really good medicine.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like you sort of answered the question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What does body love mean to you?
Ooh, I love that. And I love your books. Body love to me is that self-acceptance. To me, when I saw that your book's title were Body Love, I was like, that is so good. That is such a good message because that is that self-acceptance, self-compassion. And that's what that means to me.
Well, you've given people the tools to do that with your heart breathing. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Anna. Can you please let everyone know where they can find you and follow along and learn more about Keto-Green?
Thank you. Yeah, just join me at my website at dranna.com. And so that's Dranna, DRANNA.com. And I have the Keto Calc, which is at dranna.com/Keto Calc. So easy to kind of look at a Keto-Green day just from one aspect, that food aspect. But also join me on Facebook, in my Keto-Green community, and on Instagram at Dr. Anna Cabeca. I love connecting there. It's been super fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll let you go get to nature bathing.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one and stay sane during all of this.
You too. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at BeWellByKelly.com and follow me on Instagram at BeWellByKelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.